Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zaira Garcia, and I'm the Regional Government Relations Director at Forward.us, leading our work here in Texas. Forward.us is a bipartisan advocacy group that believes America's families, communities, and economy thrive when more individuals are able to achieve their full potential. I want to thank Congressman Castro and Congressman Casar for their leadership in conducting an oversight visit at Dilley, where families and children are being held in cruel conditions. What is happening here in Dilley is not a policy debate, and it's not abstract. It is mothers, fathers, and children being held behind these walls in conditions that put their health, their safety, and their dignity at risk. This country has long been too comfortable incarcerating children in juvenile detention centers, jails, prisons, and immigration detention. Children do not belong in cages. They belong in school, at home, in environments where they can grow and thrive. They deserve safety, security, and protection. Instead, our government is subjecting them to trauma and dehumanization, conditions that actively deprive them of needs as basic as nutrition and access to medical care. Dilley is no place for a child. It is no place for any human. And we know this isn't just happening here. Across the country, we are seeing a broader pattern of more and more families separated. Parents are being taken from their children. We cannot afford to ignore the impact on children when their parents are taken from them and incarcerated. Far too many parents, including DACA recipients, are being caught up in enforcement actions that are becoming more aggressive and less predictable. At the same time, the administration is asking for even more money for immigration enforcement, despite already having $150 billion unspent from previous appropriations. That is money that will be spent to significantly expand detention beds, to incarcerate more children, more families, perpetuating the well-documented harm of incarceration. Most recently, Trump's budget called for expanding family detention to 30,000 beds. It is not a question of whether there is enough money. It's a question of how the government is spending our tax dollars. Instead of investing in programs that make life more affordable for working communities and it's weakening the very systems that people rely on for protection. It's a choice that doesn't just impact the future of Dilley, but whether we are going to build more warehouse jails across the country. The next warehouse jail is being discussed quite literally right now, and it could end up in your community. We should all be outraged what is being funded with our tax dollars. Everyone should be able to agree that no family should be locked in a cage. As a country, we have a choice. We can continue down a path that threatens the safety and stability of our children and our own future, or choose policies that reflect our values and strengthen our communities and work to reduce the number of people behind bars. As a mother myself, it really destroys me to think about where we are keeping children with our tax dollars. And is why I am so grateful for the leadership of Congressman Casar and Congressman Castro, who continue to keep fighting for these families and continue to fight for the termination of Dilley. So with that, I want to thank Congressman Casar and hand it over to you.
Thank you, Zaida, and thank you to everyone at Forward.us. I'm Congressman Greg Casar. Thank you for joining us here in my congressional district in the heart of San Antonio. We are here to say, free the children. We just learned this last week that the Trump administration, in just over the last year, has arrested and detained 6,200 kids. Is there sort of feedback here? Hold on, can you guys hear this okay? I'll say that again. We are here to say, free the children. We just learned in the last year, the Trump administration has arrested and detained 6,200 children. 6,200 kids. Estamos demandando la libertad de nuestros hijos, de nuestras hijas, hijos, familias. Acabamos de aprender que en el último año la administración del presidente ha arrestado 6,200 niños. 6,200. Congressman Castro and I had the chance to see up close this national scandal and got to see all of the lies that the Trump administration tells about its incarceration of kids and families at Dilley. We went into the facility where there are hundreds of innocent kids and families. The overwhelming majority of the people locked up at Dilley are either children or single women. They tell us that they're rounding up the, quote, worst of the worst, but not a single person we talked to today has any criminal history at all. They tell us this is a, quote, temporary residential facility, but I was there talking to little kids that have been locked up in Dilley for nearly a year. They tell us that the kids get the needed care provided to them at this facility. But Congressman Casar and I were just talking to a 5-year-old who has a mouthful of cavities and who has not had those cavities addressed for months since the last visit. They tell us that they've got classrooms, but the high schoolers that I spoke to are just told to sit in a room and draw all day. They tell us folks can get access to free legal advice online, but when I went up to the computer and typed in immigration law, we realized the computers are not hooked up to the internet and that they haven't had internet for weeks. Trump and ICE lie and lie and lie about what they're doing to immigrant families and to our kids, and that's why it's so important for everyone all over this country to know what's really happening at Dilley, what's happening on our watch, and what the Trump administration is doing with your tax dollars. Today, I heard some of those real stories, and I want to read them to you now, but I want to add some of that again in Spanish for folks watching at home. Cuando entramos a Dilley, dicen que están metiendo a la cárcel criminales, pero no platicamos con ninguna persona que ha sido arrestada por algo criminal. Dicen que hay maestros para los niños, pero nomás los ponen a dibujar. Dicen que hay ayuda legal, pero cuando prendemos las computadoras no hay internet. Es una mentira lo que está diciendo la administración de Trump. No están metiendo a la cárcel a criminales. Han arrestado a miles y miles de niños y mamás y papás de familia. So now I want to read some of these stories in those families' own words, letters they handed to me during our visit this afternoon. To my congressman, my name is Olivia Andre. I am 19 years old, and I'm writing this letter inside the Dilley Immigration Processing Center, where I have been detained for 5 months. I write you with a heavy heart because these months have been the hardest of my life. I feel lost, alone, and many times I feel like I no longer have the strength to keep going. Before being detained, I was living in Portland, Maine, where I was beginning to build my future. I am a first-year college student studying to become a nurse, something I've always dreamed of. I wanted and still want to work as a nurse assistant, to learn, to grow, and to help people. I want to make a positive difference, but since I was detained, everything stopped. I'm separated from my family. While my mother and siblings have already been released, I need them as well. Being away from them has been incredibly painful. I remain here not understanding why I'm the only one still detained for so many months. The uncertainty, the fear, and the loneliness have been overwhelming. I am only 19, and sometimes it feels that I am carrying a weight far heavier than I can handle. Also read a letter from Junior, who is a high school student from Austin, Texas. My name is Junior Andrade. I was born in June of 2009. My brother is Alexis. He was born in June of 2013, so he's 12 years old. I am the son of Reina and Jose. For years, we've lived a good life. I went to school every single day. I went to school every single day. My brother played on the soccer team that was sponsored by NASA. We had a good life without torment or threats. But last month, on the 2nd of March, 2026, at 5 in the morning, something happened that was unthinkable. Law enforcement officers knocked down the door of our house without any kind of warrant or warning. They knocked over things all around our house. They came into our room. First, he entered the room of my little brother, who is only 12 years old, and they pointed guns at him. They threw him against the wall, and they handcuffed him. They pulled his hair. Then they smashed open the door to my room, and I didn't know what was happening. I was trembling from fear. They threw me against the wall. They handcuffed me at gunpoint, and they also did the same to my parents. Now they have us at the Dilley Immigration Processing Center. We no longer want to be here. The beds are uncomfortable. My body always hurts. They barely bring us water, and the water that we do have has made my stomach hurt. The people who work here are always in a horrible mood, and the clinic has not given the medicine that my mom needs to her. And the food that they have given us has made me sick. I want to leave here. I miss my school. I miss eating breakfast with my family, to be able to see movies together, to be able to go out together with my family. I want to be happy once again. We want to be able to stay here in the United States, in our home. We don't feel safe going anywhere else. I want to be able to go to college to study. I want to have the life that we had, and for my parents to be able to continue to work so that we can be a family once again. And I'll read you one more in Spanish. Mi nombre es Cindy Murillo. A mí me arrestaron en octubre del año pasado y tengo 4 hijos y no tengo nadie que me ayude. Aquí estamos dentro de Dilley y aquí nos han negado a nuestros derechos. Aquí nos encierran y la comida que nos dan nos hace daño. Los medicamentos que nos dan y el agua que tomamos no nos ayuda. El agua que nos dan de llave es para lavar manos, no para tomar. Y tenemos que comprar nuestra propia agua de la comisaria y está todo caro. Ya tengo 5 meses detenida y me han negado todos mis derechos. Necesito ayuda, por favor. These are just 3 of the stories of hundreds of people that are sitting in Dilley right now. Just 3 of the stories of thousands of immigrant families that have been locked up. And we've been told that this is just about undocumented immigrants or recent immigrants to this country. That's also not true. Congressman Castro and I spoke with a legal permanent resident who was coming back to the United States after leaving on vacation and now has been locked up for 6 months. This is a travesty. This is a national scandal, and it should shake all of our consciences. I now want to hand this over to Congressman Joaquin Castro, who has really been a champion at exposing what the Trump administration is doing with your tax dollars to hurt kids and families.
Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you, Zaida. Thank you to Forward.us for all the incredible work they've done, not just this year or during the second Trump administration, but for several years in pursuing a humane and comprehensive immigration plan and policy. Thank you so much. Thank you to Congressman Casar for being there at Dilley, for investigating the cases that he described, for talking to people and getting their stories, for his very insightful and thoughtful questions of ICE and Core Civic, also to his staff as well and my staff for all of the preparation and the work that went into this inspection today. This week for me has started off on Monday where my staff and I inspected the Compass Connections facility in San Antonio on the south side, where young boys are held, minors. They held a 15-year-old boy from San Antonio who was rounded up in that San Antonio raid in November, held him for 5 months, even though his mother lived just miles away from the facility, and labeled him as an unaccompanied minor. Yesterday, my staff and I went down to San Benito, Texas, in the valley, where we inspected the facility that holds the underage pregnant girls. And we were not allowed to speak to any of the girls. We did, however, pass a young baby that was lying asleep on a crib and a mother that looked to be 13 or 14 years old who was with her baby. And today, of course, we went to Dilley. This is my 4th visit to Dilley, or inspection of Dilley, this year. And folks have been wondering, and people have asked me, what is DHS like under this new Secretary of Homeland Security? Well, it's the same cruelty, but there's more secrecy now. This visit was unlike any that I've been to before at Dilley, and in many ways worse. When we got there, the folks from ICE pulled out scripts that they had been commanded to read by ICE leadership in Washington, D.C. ICE leadership also sent people down. They sent them down on, well, HHS sent people down on Monday and on Tuesday. ICE sent people from Washington down today to monitor our visit. So there was a kind of creepiness to these adults who had answered my questions before, who were out of the San Antonio field office or working in Dilley, who were sitting there, or standing there actually, in each of the rooms that we went to, the cafeteria, the library, the main conference room, and literally telling me that they had been sent talking points and reading a script. When we asked questions, they said that we would have to put those in writing and they would be answered in Washington. So under Secretary Mullins, DHS has become more secretive, not less. And yet the cruelty remains the same. Greg shared some of the stories with you of people who are facing hardship there and facing the cruelty of Dilley. I want to give you an update on one of the cases that I mentioned before. There was a 5-year-old girl who's been having, and Greg alluded to this case, who had been having very severe dental issues. She has several cavities. So when I was there in February, I pulled the folks from ICE, the leadership from ICE and the leadership from Core Civic, that is the for-profit company that runs this place. I pulled them into the room with the family there, and I said, this girl says that she has not gotten any treatment for months now. And they said, oh, Congressman, okay, well, we're gonna check her out and we're gonna send her to the medical unit and they'll take care of her. So we come back now and I ask the family how they're doing. They've been there about 10 months now. That girl has not received any dental treatment. She was prescribed ibuprofen for 2 straight months. Now, anybody that's taken ibuprofen or one of those drugs, over-the-counter drugs, you know on that label that it says that you should only take that drug a certain number of days. Because if not, it can damage your kidneys, for example. There's another boy that my staff talked to who had blood in his stool. And the medical unit told him simply, or gave him laxatives. And that was it. So there are people there with grave medical conditions that are worsening because of lack of medical treatment and because these people are not taken seriously. Because they're not treated as fully human. One example of that was a father and son who got picked up in San Antonio, and I'm going to tell you their story in a second. But they and another family filed a complaint with Core Civic at Dilley because there's a guard there, a hall guard there, who to the young boy and the father called them mojados, wetbacks. That same guard apparently called another family spics. This is in South Texas, just south of San Antonio. So I'm going to follow up and see what CoreCivic and ICE do about this case. Coming back to the family from San Antonio, we met even today people from all over the country who have been picked up by ICE. Folks from Buffalo, New York, Los Angeles, California, Miami, Florida, Dallas, Texas. Those are the ones that I can think of. But this family, this man, I believe his name was Ricardo, and his son, Fabian, were picked up in San Antonio. And this man stood and waited about 10 minutes. He was waiting very intently as I was talking to another family. And when I finished talking to the other family, he came over and he said, "I need your help. I'm here with my son. It's just me and my son. And my son is scared. He was in panic when they got us." This man worked at Bill Miller, he said, for a year. He was a cook. And his son attended Thousand Oaks Elementary School. And one morning, early in the morning, at around 4:30 in the morning, ICE raided the apartment where they were staying, the man, his girlfriend, who's also detained now, and the young boy. And ICE handcuffed his father and then took his father into the young boy's room and had him wake up his son. And he was rousing his son. And when the boy woke up at 4:30 in the morning, he woke up to being surrounded by ICE officers all over his room and seeing his father handcuffed and not knowing what was going on. These folks had temporary protective status because they're from Venezuela. They'd not committed any crime. The father, obviously the son, who's 10 years old. And yet, they're being treated like criminals and being called wetbacks at the Dilley trailer prison run by ICE and CoreCivic. And also being staffed under Greg Abbott's orders by the Texas National Guard. So Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, is actively facilitating and promoting this work. And so we have been grateful to all Americans who have spoken up. We believe that Dilley should be closed. We don't believe that any child should be in that kind of traumatic detention or prison. Those parents, as Greg mentioned, not a single one of them has any criminal record. None of them has committed a crime. They should be released. They should be in their communities. So many of them brought their letters to us, letters of support from friends and neighbors and school principals and coworkers who said, "These are wonderful people. They're part of our community. You know, we love them. We respect them. We're friends with them." And yet, Donald Trump would have you believe that each one of these people is a dangerous criminal. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. And so we're going to keep working until Dilley is closed. That's our goal. Unfortunately, the numbers for families went up from 100 people, 102 people, to about 138 people over the last week or so. We also asked ICE whether it's true that they plan to build another family detention center in Louisiana. And also we asked the question about families being detained in hotels rather than being sent to facilities. So those were some of the questions that they refused to answer that they're taking back to Washington. So we will expect answers to those questions as well. Well, thank y'all. And we'll be glad to take some questions, a few questions if y'all have them.